Basketball fans anywhere, basketball fans everywhere. Appreciate you guys for joining me now for another episode of Tate's Take, episode 87. Now, getting closer and closer to that magical number of 100. Overly excited and stoked and everything else to make that happen. But Tate's Take, find it anywhere you find your favorite podcast, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher as well, streaming live on Periscope as well as on Facebook, including on YouTube as well. YouTube, the whole nine, everywhere, anywhere, everywhere. You know where you can find the best, the most entertaining, the most informational, and the most educational basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast. That's none other than what you're listening to right now. Tate's Take, where basketball lives. Follow it. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, Tate's Take. Also, follow it on all social media platforms at Tate's Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS. Again, hashtag where basketball lives. Now, without further ado, make sure I bring my dude up in here because we're going to talk a little bit about Olympics. We got the draft that's popping tonight. That's 8:30 p. Eastern Standard Time. That's going to be taking place prior to Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. And obviously going to preview some of the conference finals games and so forth. Talk a little bit about Olympics, all that good stuff, all that. So let's get ready to bring my dude up in here, man, because I see him back there in the green room. He's been waiting oh so patiently for us. So without further ado, make sure we bring him in here in the locker room right now. Brandon Scoop B is what we call him. Brandon Robinson, podcast host of the Scoop B Radio podcast and basketball insider for Bally Sports. Follow him on Twitter at Scoop B. Scoop B, first, let me give you flowers and just all that good stuff. Congratulating you on this most recent endeavor with Bally Sports. How you doing today?
Thank you, brother. I'm doing good. How you feeling?
Oh, man, I'm blessed, man. Got the opportunity to live another day and still bringing some people on for the pod and just having some really outstanding guests, obviously, including yourself. I think what I want to touch on first, let's talk about some of these Western Conference Finals, something that we're going to see later on this evening. Again, the Clippers at Phoenix. Phoenix now is leading the series 1-0. Clippers obviously on the road without Kawhi Leonard, and Phoenix at home without Chris Paul tonight, 9 p. Eastern Standard Time. What are some of your keys to victory? Or like, is this like I don't know if I'd call it must win, but can the Clippers afford to have another series yet going down 2-0 to a team that's as dangerous as the Phoenix Suns is?
Well, you kind of hit it on the head when you were talking about affording, and you talked about just how the other two series went. When you look at what happened against the Mavs and what happened against the Utah Jazz, the Clippers are a resilient team. To put it in the context of New York City slang, they're just like the roast that just won't die. You just look at what they've done, and even what they did to close out their series against the Utah Jazz and Donovan Mitchell and them. You definitely have a level of belief that they'll be able to right this ship. I've always felt that this series would go 6 or 7 games, but on the flip side, I think many people thought that just because Chris Paul was out, that the Suns wouldn't hold their own. And I know that this is something that's been discussed over and over and over again, specifically as it relates to, what the Suns did in the bubble last year and winning 8 straight games. Devin Booker, I know Stephen A. Smith has crowned him as, the next Kobe Bryant. In my opinion, the jury's still out, but I understand where he's coming from for television. What I'll say is, the Suns are a great team behind Monty Williams. I personally think Chris Paul got robbed, but I do think that ultimately this is not what many people wanted to see, but it's what they needed. I think that when you look at the Suns, Chris Paul was the icing on the cake. You look at that the Suns needed, and I look at the Clippers and year 2 of this partnership with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. It takes a little while. When you look at the Lakers and year 2 of their partnership, they won the championship in the bubble. Year 1, LeBron was hurt, and ultimately that being hurt and not making the playoffs gifted them the 4th pick in the NBA draft in 2019, which they used to trade to get Anthony Davis. So comparatively, when you look at the Clippers, I think that the Clippers, without Doc Rivers, now Ty Lue as head coach, I think they're in a good situation. I still think it's going to go about 6 or 7 games, though.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and I'm glad that you mentioned. You said Chris Paul got robbed. Chris Paul got robbed. So I want to make sure I throw this out here first, 'cause one of the homies, mutual friends, I would imagine that we all are. With my dude, Rashad Phillips chiming in with us. RP at RP3 Natural. Give this dude a follow. He's really awesome. Saying 100. He's been one of those people that's been saying over and over again about the small point guards and guys like Chris Paul deserving to be in that same conversation. I think it's kind of similar to what you were mentioning about some of the MVP race and things of that nature. Now, me personally, I want to see Chris Paul get to the finals, maybe win a ring. He's one of those guys. I'm not really sure if he's on that verge of some of the greats that we have seen in the past of not winning a championship, if he would be put in that same conversation by the time that he is finished playing. But if not nothing else, for the fact that that whole thing still rubbed me the wrong way with him not getting the opportunity to play with the LA Lakers some years ago, and then obviously playing with the Clippers and things like that, and even more so with some of the things that you have kind of mentioned about the Clippers also being that whoever would have thought though, right? Like this would have been a Clippers team that have gotten over the hump. Like we've seen the Lob City Clippers and these Clippers and those last year's Clippers without Kawhi Leonard this year. We're gonna see a champion that's going to be hoisting the Larry O'Brien Trophy. That is not typically what we would see in the field around this late of the time in the year between these four teams. Just talk about how good or bad, in your opinion, that is that we are going to see between Clippers, Suns, Hawks, as well as Bucks. Is that good for the league, or what is your overall take on the fact that we'll see something different?
It reminds me of 3 years, 94 Houston, 95 Houston, and then 2019, the Toronto Raptors beating the Golden State Warriors. And more recently, it reminds me so much of the Raptors beating the Warriors because it was pretty much, some people would argue, lowbrow. It wasn't like a Duke or Kentucky dominated year as far as their personnel. Comparatively, you had, during that time, you had Kawhi, who went to San Diego State. You had Steph Curry, who went to Davidson. At that point, Kevin Durant wasn't playing. He did go to Texas. That's no small, that's not chump change. But you look at the playoffs this year, the last four teams, from a perspective of coming from, being in Bally, all four Bally teams are in the conference finals, which is great for my network. But as it relates to just the overall look, there's no LeBron, there's no KD, there's no Steph Curry. It reminds me of kind of, Michael Jordan retiring to play baseball and then coming back and losing in the semis the next year to the Orlando Magic. And I think that when you look at basketball, I know some people, they either really love Steph, or they really hate him. And I think the same goes for LeBron. I think they're both polarizing names. As a writer, they're both names that get you a lot of eyes and headlines. And I think in this time around, you're seeing the new crop of talent. You're looking at Trae Young. You're looking at not just Trae Young, but his great supporting cast of Kevin Huerter. You see, Clint Capella. You're looking at John Collins, a guy that teams had inquired about before the deadline. This is back when Lloyd Pierce was still a head coach. You look at the Clippers. People were kind of bashing them last year about Paul George playing well in the regular season. Paul George to me has been quite consistent. He's had a couple off games, but who hasn't? You look at how they beat the Mavericks, how they beat the Jazz, and then you look at the Bucks. A lot of people didn't think that the Bucks were going to beat the Nets. Kevin Durant played his tail off, and Kyrie Irving got hurt. It was the perfect storm for the Bucks to win it, but they won it. And I think when you look at the Hawks, I think people are looking at the fact that they beat the Knicks and they beat the Sixers. Like the Sixers were a higher seeded team. The Bucks, they beat a Nets team that was favorited. And then you look at the Suns. You look at just how they got there, as I mentioned previously. Just just growing. I remember Aiden saying that he and Devin Booker would be like Shaq and Kobe 2.0. They still got to win it. As they say in New York Lotto, you got to be in it to win it. But I definitely think that you're seeing the next crop of talent in the NBA. And, it's not LeBron. It's not Steph Curry in this finals. Maybe that'll be next year. But it's cool to see something different. You don't want the same thing from the dollar menu all the time.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And you mentioned something about Devin Booker. I'm always the guy that's first of all, if people talk.
I can't.
There we go. People calling, hey, when you gonna bring Scoop B on the podcast? Dude, like I got him on the podcast right now. I need you to stop calling me for a second. Like people hating on, like you said, the hate about Steph Curry and this guy, that guy, and this and that. Listen, a lot of light-skinned brothers in this thing right now. We got Booker, we got Trey, we got this guy, we got that guy. It's happening right now. As it relates to a guy like Devin Booker specifically, though, tell me if you feel like recently I saw Stephen A. Smith with some comments about Devin Booker being somewhat of the second coming of like a Kobe Bryant. That's what we're watching before our eyes right now. Do you think that was a little over the top, or is he kind of on board or on pace with that one?
I mean, I think Stephen A. is entitled to his opinion. Somebody who's been a pioneer in my field. I have a different slant on it, but that doesn't mean he's wrong, and it doesn't mean I'm right. It's just my personal opinion. When I look at Devin Booker, I see someone who has Kobe qualities in his game. I see a guy who has the potential to be the Kobe of his generation, but he's still Devin Booker, and I think sometimes we as consumers, we as analysts, we as a myriad of different things want to make something like what we had before. And so because he was on TV saying it, it was resounding with folks. I don't agree, but I understand. I get where he's coming from. I think Devin Booker could be the potential Kobe of our generation. I think it's the same thing with Michael. I think people often want Michael. Michael is Michael. He's one of one. I think that Kobe played like Michael. Personally, I think Kobe was a better defender than Michael, but his game is like Michael. It's the closest to Michael. That's why I think oftentimes when people talk about LeBron and compare him to Michael, I don't think it's comparable. I think LeBron is this generation's Michael, but he's LeBron. He's himself. And I think the same goes for Devin Booker. I think Devin Booker is Devin Booker. And, I'm enjoying watching him play. I think that people often connect Booker with Kobe because Booker was a fan of Kobe. Kobe took him under his wing. Kobe took many people, including Giannis, Kyrie Irving, and others under his wing. And I get what Stephen A. was saying. I just have a different slant on it, and respect his point of view, as I'm sure he respects mine.
No doubt, we got my dude Brandon Scoop B. Scoop B is what we call him. Brandon Robinson, podcast host of the Scoop B Radio podcast and basketball insider for Bally Sports. Again, on Twitter at Scoop B. Very simple, at SCOOPB. There we go. Real quick before we jump into the other side of the conference finals, let the people know where they can find your Scoop B Radio podcast, in case the folks are looking to be educated a little bit.
So Scoop B Radio is available on all streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher app, or simply by visiting scoopbradio.com. We average about 2 to 3 million streams annually. We've had anybody from Shaq, Charles Barkley, Pete Sampras, the voice of Siri, Mark Cuban, DJ Khaled, Gary Payton, and then we also repost a lot of different episodes of other shows I've been on as well. So, it's definitely a good listen if you guys have like a whole weekend to kind of deep dive into, binge listen to the podcast. And yeah, man, please check it out. ScoopBradio.com. It's also available on all streaming platforms.
Yeah, highly encourage, highly influence people to go over there and check that out. That's for sure. I want to jump around now a little bit over, as you can kind of see by the T-shirt that I'm wearing. Eastern Conference Finals Game One going to be coming up somewhere a little over 24 hours, somewhere right around that range. 8:30 p. Eastern Standard Time. The fifth seeded Atlanta Hawks going on the road to play the Milwaukee Bucks. A lot of people felt like whoever was that winner between the Bucks and the Nets was ultimately going to be the one that was going to be representing the Eastern Conference going on to the finals. But listen, we've seen crazier things happen. We're living in 2020, 2021 in the midst of a pandemic and everything else, right?
A whole
The
community.
Hawks are some fighters. What do you see in regards to what in regards to what you see for game one? Um, just kind of want to get a little preview from you on that in regards to that, and also for the series overall. What your thoughts are?
Um, I think that it's going to be 6 games. Number one, 6 or 7 games actually. I think that it's going to go back and forth. I think the Bucks. What I've liked about them is I think they're the healthiest in the whole thing right now. You know, you look at the addition of Drew Holiday. He was on a wish list of he was among players on a wish list that Giannis was looking for when he met with Bucks management during Labor Day weekend last year, and en route to signing that extension on his deal. And they went out and got Drew Holiday. I know Drew Holiday was on the wish list of a lot of teams, including the Brooklyn Nets, the Phoenix Suns, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Golden State Warriors, and essentially the Bucks felt it the best bet to move him or get him from the Pelicans in exchange for Eric Bledsoe, and it's worked wonders for the Bucks. And they legitimately have a big three with Giannis as well as Chris Middleton and also Drew Holiday. But I also think it's the other pieces to the puzzle that benefit the Bucks, and I think it's the same for Atlanta. But it's focusing on the Bucks. Bryn Forbes, I want to see a stronger showing in the conference finals than I did in round two, because I feel like in round one against Miami, he showed out. He showed up and showed out. I expect there to be a greater showing because I think it fits to his playing style. But I also think that when you look at the Bucks, they've had adequate rest over the last few days. The Hawks just finished, but the Hawks I really think are like the most overlooked team, and I think their journey to get to that point is what I appreciate so much. I think they won like 14 games leading up into when their former coach was fired at the All-Star break, and Nate McMillan really just took them and molded them. I mean, like I mentioned before, John Collins, there were about 2-3 teams that had inquired about his services at the trade deadline, or maybe like a month before the trading deadline, and they kept him. And I think the biggest move that helped them was the addition of Lou Williams. It must be some type of Mario Brothers power, Sonic the Hedgehog power up in those lemon pepper wings from Magic City, because he's right at home, a Georgia native, Gwinnett County native. But I definitely think that they've just clicked at the right time, and you're playing under a defensive minded coach in Nate McMillan. I also like the fact that he can kind of poke his chest out at the fact that the Pacers let him go, and he's the coach that they hired to replace him is gone, and he's in the conference finals. The only thing missing at this point is an extension, and if they or taking that title of interim head coach off and making him the full-time head coach, and if not, there won't be a shortage of suitors for Nate McMillan's services because he's a good coach. And that's what I see so far. Game one, I think, is going to be a fill-out game between those two teams, and I don't know. I just think it's going to be an interesting series, but 6 or 7 games, definitely think it's going to go the distance.
Shout out Gwinnett County, man. That's my neck of the woods over there in the Gwinnett, man. Stand up. And haven't had a chance yet, Scooby. I don't know if you have yet, but I haven't had a chance to stop over there at the MC, man, and check out any of those lemon pepper wings, man. But sometime in the near future, I can kind of see that. And you know what? I think that you're right on board with uh, just speaking about the Hawks, probably the most disrespected team that's probably still existing in these playoffs, and people maybe not giving them necessarily the chance that they are the other three teams. I know Milwaukee probably feels quite disrespected too, especially considering the fact that the lack of their ability to get to this point. A lot of people not necessarily believing in them and highly critical of Giannis and highly critical of Budenholzer, who essentially a lot of people feels like job is on the line and whatever else. But the Hawks have exceeded expectations, not only with getting a 4 seed when the playoffs was probably at the top of their list, and not only that, but winning, the first round against the Knicks in hostile environment and so forth, and doing that in 5 games, and then beating Philly, which a lot of people probably didn't see happening. I'm not sure that we can really. Okay, my apologies. Check, check, check. Mic check. My bad. 2 seconds. Jeez. There we go. There we go. There we go. Trying to put this whole thing together. People keep calling, calling, calling. Looks bad optically, but I guess we're all busy. And because we're all busy, going to get ready to get you out of here pretty soon. Just a couple more questions for you. 2 more questions for my dude, Scoop B. The first one being the NBA lottery on tonight, 8:30 p. Eastern Standard Time, prior to Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. What do you expect to see? I mean, listen, I'm a bad boy by nature, by birth. Bad boy Detroit Piston wouldn't know it by the shirt that I'm wearing, but different people are paying the bills right now and giving opportunities. So that's what we're gonna do there. But what do you see from our Pistons, and or what do you see happening in the draft lottery tonight? And do you think that maybe Kaminga is the guy, maybe Green is the guy, Jalen Green, maybe it's Suggs, maybe it is Cunningham, Evan Mobley, who knows? What do you think that we're gonna see tonight at 8:30?
Well, you're going to see a ping pong ball go in the direction of teams like the Pistons, as you mentioned. I'd like to see them kind of continue their rebuilding process. I mean, the last winnable version or iteration of the Pistons that you've seen was the '04 Bad Boys. Or I don't even know if you consider the Bad Boys, but you just say the '04 Pistons team with Chauncey Billups. I don't want to get in trouble with Isaiah, but the '04 team with Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Ben Wallace, and as well as Rasheed Wallace and all the other fixins like Lindsey Hunter and Eldon Campbell. And that was a good team in '04. But I definitely think that you kind of Detroit is due some level of return. For some reason, the Cleveland Cavaliers are always finding themselves somewhere in that ping pong top 3 for whatever reasons. I wouldn't be surprised if they go after. When you talk about Jonathan Kuminga, I hear a lot of scouts and a lot of experts say that he's the real deal, and it would be cool to see him go one. But I definitely think that the draft lottery will be interesting, even from the perspective of a Chicago Bulls organization, to see what they can do. They were like a 9th or 10th seed, and it just seems that they're not able to get healthy and right that ship. But hopefully a change is coming soon, and we'll see. But yeah, with a lot of things to be excited about going into the draft lottery this evening. So I'm interested to see how that pans out.
Last but certainly not least, I want to go ahead and throw this last question out there because I know we're kind of up against, and we do appreciate you for all of our time, but we do have to make sure that we mention that with this last question and portion of the segment talking about USA basketball, we're going to use this as kind of like quick release. It is sponsored and powered by Exotics Products by Curtis Smith. Look good, feel good, play great. Exoticsproducts.com. Make sure that when you're making your purchase at the checkout, go to the discount code, put in Tate's Tip. Get your 15% off for that all 100% natural products and no chemicals added. For those that have confirmed that they will be playing and accepting the invites, rather, let's put it that way. Bam Adebayo, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, James Harden, Damian Lillard, and Jason Tatum. Those who have officially denied the invitations being Jimmy Butler, Stephen Curry, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, De- um, um, Donovan Mitchell, and most recently, since we've been kind of doing this, is Chris Paul as well, after reports showed something different. What do you think that the representation of this year's USA team needs to have? And does any of these players that declined and or accepted the invite surprise you by any means? Is there anybody who hasn't necessarily made a commitment or lack thereof just yet that you would like to see or looking forward to seeing if they will be a part of it or not?
No, I don't think so. I think probably the only ones that surprised me were Harden and Durant, just because Harden, or rather Durant, excuse me, is in a position where he put so much in the playoffs, and also was coming off of an Achilles injury, a very serious one 2 seasons ago. So you'd think there would be a lot of rest involved in that. Harden, I'm kind of on the fence about, only because I think kind of playing and not being stale will actually be beneficial to his hammy, and maybe in staying consistent, that will carry over into the season. Probably the only person I wish that was playing and didn't get an invite is Carmelo Anthony, particularly because he's become Mr. Olympian for USA basketball. And after like that level of disrespect that he received in the NBA, for some reason, it seems to carry over into Olympic play. And I think this is the second time that this has happened. So, it'll be interesting. He was not on the U.S. select team, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019. And, this is a guy that won multiple championships in that regard. So probably that's the biggest one that surprised me. Other people, no, I think it's cool that Damian Lillard's playing, keeps his name in the news, and you never know how that'll carry over into just conversations and relationship building, as you saw in the bubble. Damian Lillard, or excuse me, rather, Victor Oladipo in the bubble was heavily having conversations and conversing with folks in bubble in Miami. And so you saw it even during, the Heatles era of the Miami Heat with LeBron and Wade and Bosh, where those type of conversations carried over into a recruiting trip, if you will, on the United States' dime. So I think the same thing will likely take shape in some way, somehow, some form this summer. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what comes of this summer. And yeah, that's what I have for you.
Scoop, who you got advancing to the finals and winning championship? Last question.
The Phoenix Suns and the Atlanta Hawks.
Interesting. Who's winning it? Who's taking it all?
I'd like to see the Suns win it.
Okay. Good deal. That's my dude right there, man. We do appreciate you for coming through, of course, blessing us with your presence. Scoop B, Brandon Robinson, podcast, also Scoop B Radio Podcast. He told you where you can find it all. Make sure that you go and do that. Also, go and check out the website. Find yourself some very good information there. And Basketball Insider for Bally Sports. Congratulations again. Follow him on Twitter. Dude is posting all kind of stuff, putting really good basketball content and information out there to educate the people at Scoop B. That is at Scoop B. Scoop, thank you so much, man, for joining us. Really appreciate it, and blessings and prosperity to you.
Brother, thank you for the opportunity to be myself.
Absolutely, no doubt. Thanks so much. Appreciate him for coming on and just joining the program and showing some love. My dude Scoop B joining us for episode number 87. And of course, we're always thankful that he has the opportunity to join us and to even take time out of his busy schedule, if you will, and doing all of that good stuff. And I think that that's pretty much going to conclude today, episode number 87. But we will be back later on tonight. Not sure how familiar that you guys may be. Good buddy of mine, former colleague. I think it's fair to call him a lifetime friend. Bryant McFadden, who's also a Super Bowl winner, also played in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers, is going to be joining us at the conclusion of the NBA playoff game tonight. About 15 minutes after, we're going to go live and we're going to get him in here and get his takes on Hawks and what he saw so far in the Western Conference finals between both games and recap that stuff a little bit. And we're kind of going to power up on some of that as well. So make sure that you join us 15 minutes after the conclusion of tonight's game. Tate's Take the podcast. Remember to go and subscribe everywhere that you find your favorite podcast, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, the whole nine. You know we stream live on Facebook as well as on YouTube as well as on Periscope. So go and subscribe so you don't have to just be flipping through and be like, oh, Deshaun just so happens to be educating a lot of people today, and just checking in on that. You'll get the notification. Just hit the subscribe button. It's very simple. Tell your mama, tell your grandmama, tell your baby mama where she can find the best, the most informational, the most educational basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast. None other than Tate's Take. That's going to conclude episode number 87. But not before I let you know to make sure that you go and follow along on all social media platforms at Tate's Take Hoops. TateSTakehoops. Hashtag where basketball lives. And don't forget, go over to Exotics and get that 100% all natural products. All natural products give your skin what it finally deserves, and get rid of all those chemicals. No chemicals added. So make sure that you go and check that out. Get to the checkout and put in the discount code Tate's Take, TateStake. Get you 15% off and treat yourself to something nice. Appreciate everybody for joining, watching, listening, subscribing, and those of you who will do so in the future. I'll see you guys later on this evening in a minute. Bye.